thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So we'll get straight into it. You've just published a book, More Than the Mirror.
Yeah, that's
Tell me,
right.
what was the inspiration behind that?
So I can't say that I sat down and had this big grand plan to write a book. It just kind of happened. Now, in saying that, during lockdown, there was a book that I was writing on, just kind of writing just for fun. It was a very young kid's book, and to be
Hmm,
honest, I got a little bit frustrated with you submit it to one publisher, and then it's like 16 weeks later, and I got bored of it and put it
okay.
to bed.
Yeah.
So this one then came about. Part of my job, I work in the area of eating disorders and body image, and I would do a lot of school presentations. And I mainly, oh no, I always did secondary school for the last 10 years or something like that. A friend of mine is a primary school teacher, and she was kind of in the car saying to me one day, look, you need to do something for primary schools. Like it's a really big issue around body image and, the way kids are talking about their bodies. And I was very dismissive of it. But then she kind of kept coming back and saying, look, you need to do something. So eventually I put together a program that was, really suitable for that kind of age group. So you're
Hmm,
talking about 10, 11, 12. Using a cartoon, the little cartoon, his name is Alf, and I've been using him on Instagram for the last few years. So I wanted to make it really child friendly, not very
yeah.
intimidating. It's a big topic, but how do you make it, child appropriate? Brought it into schools. That did really well. And then being
Yeah.
in the schools then really showed me how much of an issue body image was. It was just it's phenomenal how many kids
Okay.
are not feeling too good about their bodies.
Okay.
So a parent reached out and asked me would I be able to make some worksheets, and the worksheets turned into a book, if I'm honest, because I couldn't stop once I started. So yeah, so it was kind of an accident,
That's
if I'm
brilliant. Yeah.
honest. Mm.
Yeah. Or I think it's called in science blue skies thinking.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, the
right.
big discovery that's found by accident is blue skies thinking.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was. It was an
Yeah, yeah,
accident. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Very good. And so tell me about the program that you do for schools. What's the program look like?
So I have two. One is secondary, one is primary. So the secondary school one is understanding eating disorders. So it's very much like what it says in the tin. The primary school one is called Reflections. So it just kind of follows the journey of that little character Alf, and he just really
Hmm,
battles with his not really feeling great, and he tries to change his appearance. So because we're talking about kids here, he sees like a bunch of peas and he thinks, well, if I paint myself, so it's you're
I
going in on a
see.
very sort of like, kind of a sneaky way, like, but if he paints himself green, then he'll fit in and everything. But so very much opening a discussion around why that won't work with the
Okay.
kids, and it just really follows through the slides and everything and through little activities, the his journey. But it's also getting the children to really go inward and how are they feeling and where do feelings turn up in their bodies and stuff, and the relationship between wanting to change yourself and as a result of actually how you feel as opposed to what you look like. So there's an awful lot in it around thinking and feeling, because that's really where
Okay.
eating disorders come from. They don't
Okay.
necessarily come from media. They come from within.
Yeah. So with body image then and body image issues, what one of the challenges that body image can lead to is eating disorders.
Yeah.
Could you go into a bit more depth about kind of how that looks like for a child, how a child can progress from, say, having body image issues into a something more serious like an eating disorder?
Yeah, well, I suppose look, there's something very different about having poor body image and then going and actually doing something about it.
Okay.
So when the body image is really poor, there is a belief there that, well, if I change my appearance, then that'll make it okay. But what you're really saying is, I feel uncomfortable, and a way of getting out of discomfort is to change the body. And let's face it, in the society we live in, you're getting validation for that. So as children turn into teenagers and everything, they start losing weight, they start getting an awful lot of sort of compliments and um feedback really from
Okay.
society, and that really fuels it then, because their self-esteem starts to be built and their self-worth starts to be built on their appearance. So it's a really tough one. And then unfortunately, there's so many facets in an eating disorder. There's so many levels to it. It's highly addictive. It becomes
Okay.
a solution. This is how I regulate my emotions now. So when I feel bad, I'm going to restrict food, or maybe throw up food or over exercise or whatever it is. So you become dependent on it then as a way of you
Yeah.
regulating your emotions. But I
Wow.
think one of the things that I think people don't realize as well is that it is really fueled by anxiety. That like we can't blame media 100% on media causes eating disorders, because some people don't get them. So some
Sure.
people will
Sure.
never develop it. But
Sure.
really, like, if there is that anxiety inside of you, that can very easily turn into anxiety as a protector. Anxiety tells you to do things or not go to places as a way of protecting you. And don't eat food, and then you'll
Okay.
be okay, and
Okay.
and you'll fit in, and people will like you better. And also, it really it does start long before the eating
Yeah.
disorder behavior, so to speak.
Wow. Okay. So there's a huge societal element, but at the same time, there's individual differences within that. So some children might feel body image pressure, but
Mm,
not all children with body image thoughts will go on to have disorders.
absolutely.
So, what, from your point of view, is the solution for any parents that are out there that might be worried about their children, to prevent any negative thoughts about themselves leading to something like an eating disorder?
Yeah, and where I would start there is around the anxiety piece. That when
Okay.
a child is feeling particularly worried about something, um, to really kind of knock those thoughts on the head, straight
Okay.
away, and talk them out and really have those open discussions about it. The one big thing that I do with my daughter is I always ask her where everything is in her body, where she's feeling particular emotions in her body. So when
Okay.
she kind of comes in and, say for example, she's 11. So like if a friend is after upsetting her, but like asking her, how does that feel? And a lot of the feelings are in her stomach. So you can
Okay.
see how as a child, you might think, I'm going to make this go away by maybe not putting food in my stomach or making my stomach smaller. Big emotions inside,
Yeah.
in her stomach. So kind of talking her
Yeah.
through them. And it's really, really important.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like, society is telling us that we need to look a particular way. And from a very young age, that's apparent when I go into schools now. They have phones, they have social media. You're talking about 11-year-olds being exposed to maybe 6 hours a day on social media, which
Wow.
is, yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually really, really scary. So the
Yeah.
message there, and I have this actually, was only in a school the other day
Yeah.
from two of the students. One was, it's endless. And one was,
Okay.
you'll
Wow.
never feel good enough. So when you think
Wow.
about what they're being exposed to,
Yeah. Yeah.
watching that exposure is really important as well. We can't manage it as adults, so it's really hard for them as children.
Yeah, I totally agree with particularly that last point about we can't manage it as adults.
Mm,
Um, I mean, social media has obviously a lot of positive benefits, like the podcast, the platform that I'm going to be
sure.
posting this on is a type of social media. So there's a lot of good that it can do, but no one, I don't think that when the website like Instagram was invented, that the expectation would be that people would be spending so much time on it, and I don't think that the experiments were done to see what this is going to do to an adult mind, let alone the mind of a child. And sure, in my career, I would have worked with a lot of young adults, so 17, 18. And it's only in the past 5 to 6 years that I've really seen
Yeah.
what I would describe as fully fledged smartphone addiction,
Mm,
where the thought of the phone not being on their person is absolutely anxiety provoking. It's devastating for them. Um, and I really like that term digital native, that people born from the year 2000 and later have never known a world without a smartphone
it's
or
true. Yeah.
Facebook or YouTube, whatever it is. They've literally grown up with it, where we probably born in the previous century, without those technological pressures. So it's really interesting what you say. So if we bring it back to the book, how can the book help a child?
Yeah, and that's it. Like it's not a fix it, you know. It's really just about planting seeds. So, like I
Yeah,
said, it started off with kind of one worksheet, and it was kind of it was something like I think it was maybe around based around affirmations. I think was the first page, you know, and then it was kind of getting them more to tune into their body. I discuss an awful lot about like the weight of feelings. How
okay,
maybe like if you're feeling really happy, you have a tendency, even as an adult, to kind of just be a little bit more sort of energetic and lighter in your body. But if you're feeling really sad, there's definitely a weight to that. You know, your shoulders
yeah,
go down and you can actually feel quite heavy. So a lot of it is discussing how when you look in the mirror, so the brain is like this big processor, that kind of gets in the
yeah,
way of you look in the mirror and then your brain kind of kicks in. And then what you see actually really, it's called reflection. So what you see is a reflection of how you feel really. Because if you're in a really bad humor and you look in the mirror, the chances are you're not going to be too happy with what you see. If you're in an okay humor, you're going to grant and you're going to leave the house. So it really is
yeah,
dependent. And that goes for adults as well. Actually, there was someone who actually bought the book for their niece, and they kept it
okay,
themselves because they were like, I actually really like the simplicity of it. It's just
yeah,
really, it discusses things in a really simple manner. So she kept
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, because
And
even
it's
as adults, we don't know this.
well, yeah, yeah. So it's lessons for life then. It's not just lessons for
Sure.
children, lessons for life. That sounds great. So yeah, we would started talking about the social pressures, and so social media is a huge one. Is there anything else that you can identify that maybe that I don't know, or advice for parents that you could impart that would
Yeah.
support children to navigate society as it gets more and more complicated for all of us?
Well, you see, you've nailed it there. Like it's so complicated. Just to get up in the morning and to live is so complicated. You're trying to navigate social media apps. You're trying to have. I mean, if you look at the pressure now that I suppose when I was growing up, like you kind of had to have the cool runners and maybe the cool jeans, and then you were
Yeah,
grand, you
yeah,
kind of fit in.
yeah,
But
yeah,
now as they get a little bit older, they have to have the false lashes and they have to have the tan and they have to be able to go to the discos and all these things that are like kind of older than what they are. So there's
yeah,
so much pressure coming from everywhere. Then the pressure to do well in school and just really pressure from everything. So when we're under that much pressure, we're going to find a way of coping. Like
yeah,
that's human nature, that we're going to find some ways of coping. And if you're an adult, you might drink,
yeah,
you might shop, you might gamble, whatever it is, to kind of take you away from it. And it's no different for a child. You're going to find some way of coping. And if losing weight makes you feel better, then you're going to lean on it more because it reinforces the belief then that this works. This does actually make me feel better. I'm fitting in now. People are accepting me. I feel more comfortable in my body. So it just reinforces it. And it really kind of kicks off from there. And that the unfortunately the behavior in itself becomes addictive.
yeah.
Um,
Wow, yeah, yeah.
for
So
so many reasons.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And addiction is such a strong word, isn't it? And or my understanding of addiction is that people get addicted to things that are bad for them, or when something's bad for you, it's considered to be an addiction. Um, but whatever the behavior is, and what you mentioned too is it's a way to cope. It's
See, it's
better.
not bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
yeah.
better than how they felt before they engaged in that behavior.
Exactly. And it's like one of my favorite quotes is, I'm going to probably say this wrong now, but it's Gabor Mate. And it's like in your
Mm.
escape from to, what is it? In your attempt to escape pain, you create more pain. And that's really what,
Oh,
an eating disorder is. It's an escape, but unfortunately it gives you that instant relief that you're
yeah,
seeking, that instant, and it numbs. Like you're talking about living in your head. When you have any kind of distress around food, you tend to become very obsessed with food. You think about food a lot. You think about what you're going to eat. You think about
yeah,
what you're not going to eat, how you're maybe going to get rid of the food, how you're going to jog it off, how many calories is in it, how many grams of fat, and so on and so on. It's just all numbers, really. Um, so you're talking about living up here.
yes,
And so it works in a way because you're away from here, and this is the bit that you can't cope with is
yeah,
is the body stuff. So you've created a scenario where you're totally living in your head. So in a
yeah,
way, it makes sense,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And let's delve into that a little bit more. So, what do you mean when you talk about head stuff and body stuff?
Yeah. So there's a bit like if you're experiencing feelings that are really overwhelming, right?
Yeah,
If you're really angry, if you're really overwhelmingly upset or any other feeling, it can be very hard to cope with. You know, like
mm,
I've heard people saying, like, oh, I was going to cry so much, I felt like I was going to die from it, or, you know, I was going to hurt somebody because I was so angry. So it's really a way of disassociating almost away from the body
yeah,
is to live up in the head because you're
yeah,
consumed with it. Like you're literally, it's all you think about. Maybe 90, 95% of the day, depending on where you're at with it. So it keeps you away from that. You can't feel it anymore. And I've heard people say they don't feel physical pain because they're so not
yeah.
in their body. They're
Wow.
so unaware. I suppose what comes to mind is, do you ever watch like a movie and someone's in the throes of, you know, there's some sort of battle going on or something and they get
Mm,
shot and they don't even realize that they got shot because they're so intent on whatever
yeah,
it is that
yeah,
they're trying to do,
yeah.
and then they realize 5 minutes later they've been shot. So
Yes,
it's kind
yeah,
of a
yeah.
little bit like that.
Okay, wow,
You're
yeah, yeah,
so away from it, you don't even know what's happening in your own body, so you don't know
yeah,
when you're hungry anymore, you don't know when you're full,
yeah.
and you don't feel pain, you don't know when there's something wrong inside your
Wow,
body as well, so it's quite
wow.
scary.
Yeah, I remember a study that I read a couple of years ago, and exactly what you're saying, that we feel physical pain and emotional pain in the same part of the brain.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when they look at pain studies in MRIs, and they look at the intensity of the pain based on the MRI imaging, is that emotional pain is as, if not more painful than breaking an arm,
Yeah.
losing a limb. So that pain is really intense. And so
Mm,
because there's no physical pain, then there's only emotional pain. So it makes sense that you'd escape into your thoughts.
sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm.
So the book then is designed to it's an early intervention, I imagine.
Yeah, it's I
Yeah.
wouldn't even call it intervention.
Okay.
It's just really about getting them to be more aware of their thoughts and feelings. So you're kind of going back before the sort of change in the body bit. You're kind of going
Okay.
back and you're asking them to identify like what's happening inside their body and what they might need to do with it. You see, that's the thing. We're not taught sometimes. Like if you get angry, well, what you know, that's an emotion and it's a very valid emotion. So
Sure.
what do you need to do with that anger? You know, so like a lot of
Yeah.
kids are told you can't get angry. You know, you're not allowed, that's bold, or you're not, you have to stop crying or whatever it is. So the one thing that I would be encouraging is no, you need to figure out what it is that you need to do that's not changing your body. So if you are sad, do you need to cry? Do you need to talk to somebody? But you need to talk about it, but you need to
Mm,
understand where you feel it in your body as well so that it's not scary. Because when our emotions become really overwhelming, when there's a lot of them at the same time, we find safety in knowledge. You know, like when we understand something, we feel a little bit safer. So getting them to understand, okay, this swirling in my stomach is actually anxiety. This doesn't mean there's anything wrong with my stomach. I'm not broken. This is actually anxiety. What is this about? And what do I actually need to do with it? So it really is just about planting seeds. Then, of course, social media comes up in it as well.
yeah.
Because you know that's a big thing, and trying to just get them to. I would never ask them to, you know, not be on their phones. In an ideal
Sure.
world, they wouldn't be, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I know that that's not realistic. But it's, you know, getting them to look at the benefits of being out in nature and when they're with their
Mm,
friends,
mm,
how do they feel? You know,
yeah.
when they're outside, and actually, as I'm talking to you, I can actually see my daughter rolling over the green there. They're playing in a tent. So
Yeah.
like, you know, what they might feel is you know, it's joy and it's happiness and all that sort of stuff
Mm,
versus how do you feel when you come off your phone, and many of them are like,
yeah.
well, sad,
Yeah.
overwhelmed, tired,
Yeah.
you know, so how do they feel in your body? So
Yeah.
again, she comes in, she probably feels quite light in her body, and when the kids are coming off social media, they tend to probably feel very heavy and sometimes weepy, and you know, so it's really getting them to check in with that sort of stuff. What feels better and what are
Yes.
you doing to generate those kind of good feelings, you
Yeah.
know? But look, a lot of it goes back to the parents as well.
Yeah.
But then it's really like put a lot of activities in it because kids are not going to read 60 pages of a book without having some sort of break in it. So the activities are there just to kind of back up what I've discussed in the books as well, and that why changing your body doesn't work, that it works for that moment, for that second, it makes you feel better until you realize. And look, in real life, in adult life, right? Like it's the same thing. um you know you change your body and then it fits in with what society wants now, which is a particular look, and you can
Sure.
probably kind of see that in your head, but that's
Yeah.
going to change. That look is going to change again in 5 years or 10
Oh,
years.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. When you
Then you're
say
not
that,
going to fit in,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, totally. When you say that, I just think back to the early 2000s and Kate Moss, and when
Exactly.
that super skinny body image was desirable. And now what I
Different.
notice in media is it's changed. People refined the more athletic kind
Yeah.
of build. But then if you go back 200 years, it would have been, you know, different again. People would have seen slightly larger people as more
Yeah.
attractive
But
because
it's
it
but
was a
it's
symbol of
interesting.
wealth. Yeah.
Interesting we're having a conversation about fashionable bodies though. That's
Yeah.
that's
It
part of the.
just proves the point. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then when you work to look a particular way, but that's going to fall out of fashion.
Yeah.
And we can't change our bodies the way we change our clothes. You see, we live in a society where, we
Yeah.
technically can, because obviously we can, get all these surgeries and liposuction and this, that, and the other done to us. So we technically do live in a society where we can, and it's really easily accessible. So that becomes a really easy solution to making you
Sure.
feel better. But then I suppose, where does it stop?
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's just the goalposts
Yeah.
keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, do people that go through those procedures, is it a permanent solution or temporary?
Oh, it's temporary,
Yeah.
100% temporary. And you read the stories about it, that people get multiple surgeries and they're
Yeah.
still. And sure, we get, without naming any celebrities, we can see some of them that have had numerous surgeries, and
Yes.
you can't fix self-esteem from the outside. Like that's not where the issue is. Self-esteem is within the self, it's inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really it's about going in and doing the work in there. But I think sometimes it is seen as quite kind of an easy fix. But again, that's not what eating is. They're not purely, and I think that's
Yeah.
misleading to say that they're just about body image. Really, it's about anxiety of not fitting in.
Okay.
Like, and if I walk down the road and I'm different than everybody else, then I feel so anxious about that I need to fix myself
Okay.
in order to fit in. So
Okay.
again, it goes back to the anxiety piece
Yeah. Yeah.
again, and the not fitting in.
So it's all about anxiety in children with these issues that are coming up.
And it could look, it wouldn't say it because everybody's so different. It's hard to, but like it could be about anger, and
Okay.
it's
Okay.
anger and in at the body, and particularly like the eating disorder behaviors are very metaphorical a lot of the time.
Okay.
For people who are vomiting, a lot of the time that can be emotional release, or it can be, when you think about it,
Mm.
it is quite a graphic behavior. So it's like a violence on the body
Okay.
because you're taking anger out on your body, or you're restricting food because you're
Yes.
so angry.
Yes.
Um, so look, really, it's about feelings. I
Okay.
think that's probably or emotions. That's probably the best way of describing it. So it
Yeah.
is unique for everybody. And look, that's the big thing. And I'm a coach, right? So
Sure.
um, it's asking the person, what is it for you? And I think
Okay.
that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is assuming this is because, and you can't tell a person what it is. It's really important to ask a person, what does this mean to you? What is it
Yes.
about for you? What way is this serving you? And that's really where you're going to be able to help the best, is asking, because everybody's individual. So it's not, oh God, this is a terrible pun, but one size fits all. Like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah. That's no. That I think that's powerful advice for people. It's individual. It's about feelings. It's about hitting that root cause, not about treating the symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Escape.
Yeah.
Escape is another word that comes,
Yeah.
but I think I
Okay.
did mention that earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find the book?
So the book is, I published it through Amazon. because like I said, it wasn't meant to be a book, and then it turned into a book, and I really didn't want to go through the whole thing of publishers again and
Yeah,
stuff. So I just, if you want anything done, just do it yourself kind of thing. So I published it on
bro.
Amazon. So it is available through there and all the markets on Amazon, and then it is available on my website as well. But I'll just lead you back to Amazon. But I have just set it up in such a way, like I've put it out on social media, that because I know it's popped up in a lot of school libraries and stuff. I've gotten feedback on that. So if anybody wanted to bulk buy it, to contact me directly, and I'll make sure that I organize
Brilliant.
that they can buy that at a discounted rate,
That's
because
great.
I'd love to see it more in schools. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And I'll make sure that all links are in the description. So
sure.
if everyone could press the little more button and have a look at that, that'd be great. But so moving on then slightly, because I know your passion for this comes from your own experiences of eating disorder.
Yeah.
So take me through that journey. What happened for you that led to your own eating disorders?
Yeah. So I don't know where to start now, because I'm like, do I start with the behavior bit or do I start to the build up? I suppose I'll start with the behavior bit. So
Okay.
I distinctly remember exactly what happened. I remember watching the TV, and
Mm.
there was a girl on it who was struggling with bulimia. So bulimia is, would be classically would be eating a lot of food and then throwing it up.
Yeah.
And I remember watching this and thinking, I'm going to do that. Like, it literally was that I'm going to do that. Now, obviously, there was a lot of, like, no person would sit there and think I'm going to do that if they're, very okay in themselves. So obviously, there was something going on for me. Um, but I remember trying that, and really it kind of went from there. And then there was periods of restriction and over exercising and vomiting all the way through. But actually, when I look back, it started so long before that. That's just really when that's why that
Okay.
I'm going to do that came up.
Okay.
I was so anxious as a child, and I didn't realize that was really, people talk about voice when they talk about eating disorders, that there's a voice telling them what to do and not to eat that, and, eat that amount of calories and so on and so on. I didn't realize that was the same voice that was telling me when I was younger, switch
Mm.
on and off the lights
Mm.
in multiples of 3, and tap wood 9 times. And, so what would be classed as OCD really was the same voice for me. And
Okay.
what it was really trying to do is keep me safe.
Okay.
Like, it was like, if you tap wood 9 times, then everything will be okay. If you turn on and off the light in a particular sequence, everything will be okay.
Okay.
And I suppose it just was another level up from that then, when that just wasn't, I suppose, giving me the safety that I wanted. Then I found, now my body image was really poor as well, and certainly reinforced through going to school and stuff like that. So this gave me a way of dealing with that as well. But really, it was the same. I wouldn't say, and this is where I have an issue with labels when people talk about
Okay.
OCD and then they talk about, like, bulimia or anorexia or whatever. I'm like, really? That, for me anyway, and I can't speak for everybody, for me, that was the same voice all the way through. It just manifested
Mm.
in various different ways, and again, it was very hard to label me as well. Like, I know my GP
Sure.
found that really hard. So I think she put anorexia slash bulimia on my chart,
Okay. Okay.
which, because you will just gravitate to whatever behavior makes you feel better at the time. You don't necessarily fit into it. But yeah, look, I put that back. Like, I suppose my first memory was about 8, and this is why it's so important. I think the work in primary schools and stuff. My first memory of
Okay.
8, looking at other kids and thinking, but if I was their size, I'd feel better. And I don't know where
Mhm.
I got that notion from, but I remember not feeling good in my body, and
Okay.
then thinking, if I look like them, I'd feel better. And that became, I suppose, a whole purpose for me then, all the way through my teens.
Okay.
Um,
Wow. So if you it started off very young.
mm.
Okay. And really interesting what you said about the GP giving you a label. Did it sounds like that could have been more of a hindrance than a help?
Yeah. And I think this is why a lot of people don't realize this. When you label somebody, right, there is a competitive nature with people with eating disorders
Okay.
or distress around food, where they try to be very good at it. So I could have got a degree in how to
Okay.
deceive and,
Okay.
and do all the things that I was doing. I was very
Okay.
protective of it. So when I got that label, I really wanted to be anorexic. And I was like, but I had slash bulimia. And I remember just feeling like even worse about myself because I was like, God, I can't even do this properly. Because, there is that high degree of perfectionism as well. So I found it, I really think, look, it's important among professionals as a way of kind of communicating. Obviously if people are going to dietitians and they're getting medical support and stuff, it just kind of gives an indication of the behavior they're doing because obviously they're looking after the medical side of it. But in
Yes.
terms of the person, I haven't found anybody who thought it was helpful to be
Okay.
labeled. And then
Okay.
unfortunately that becomes that person's identity. They're
Yes.
known as the anorexic or the bulimic or whatever, and then it becomes really hard for them to who am I without this label now? If I decide that I don't want to do this anymore,
Okay.
who am I? So it can be really, really
Yeah.
it could be a challenging thing. But look, again, there's no right or wrong. Some people might find, again, it's going back to that person and
Yes.
asking them,
Yeah. Yeah.
is it helpful for you? And
Yeah.
I work with a lot of clients in that way because some people will be like, call it like Anna, someone else will call it Ed, someone else will call it,
Yeah.
the voice, the dark passenger I've heard. I can't something coming from behind. There's all these different terms that people use, and some of them are out there in mainstream media, so they're probably I think Anna is probably the biggest one.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but asking that person, do you have a name for it? And then I've heard people call it like the names, actual, like, be like saying Adam, like, do you know what I mean? Or,
Yeah.
they call it names. And again, it makes it that kind of, okay,
Yeah.
well, what's he saying to you? Or,
Yeah.
so it's again working with that person and their
Yeah.
individual understanding of it.
Yeah. It's really giving this thought a name almost detaches the person from the thoughts. It's almost like they're dividing themselves, and
Yeah, and ultimately it's their brain, but at the
yeah.
same time, it does help to detach it because what is he trying to do, like, because
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, and it's like
Yeah.
anxiety in somebody, like, anxiety is there to do a job. Now it's doing
Yeah.
a really, really messed up job of it, but it thinks it's doing a job. It's there
Yeah.
ultimately to keep the person safe. Don't go on the motorway, don't do this, don't do that, you're going to get hurt, people are going to laugh
Yes.
at you, all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. So it's trying to
Yeah.
do a job.
Yeah.
So when you can detach a little bit from it, you can really kind of ask, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Like, what, like, so you're nearly having this kind of conversation with it rather than trying to ignore it. And I know some models will say, just ignore it.
Okay.
But in my experience, when you ignore something, it tends to get louder. Like, it's like if you hear a tap tripping at night or something when you're in your bed, you try and
Yes.
ignore
Yeah.
that, it just gets louder.
It's like
Mm.
the whole expression of try not to think about the pink unicorn.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I,
Yeah.
I ask, what is it you're trying to do, and is it helping? So that would
Mm.
be a little bit of the way that I would work. And again, it's just around if the person wants to work that way, obviously, of course, but a lot of people do have some sort of name for it, so it's
Okay.
really interesting to work with. Yeah.
It reminds me of a book, The Chimp Paradox. I don't know, have you ever come
No.
across it? So it's by a fellow called Professor Steve Peters, and he uses the metaphor of so you've got you as the thinking, feeling person,
Mm.
and the anxious part of you that's trying to protect you is a chimpanzee.
Mm.
So the chimpanzee is physically much stronger than you because you're just a human in your own head.
Okay.
So if you try to overpower the chimp will always fail. But
Okay.
the human being a human and the chimp being a chimp, the human's much more clever than the chimp. So when the chimp sees danger and or feels anxiety, the chimp goes crazy and
Mm.
starts
Yeah.
overpowering all aspects of your thinking. But the human, instead of fighting it, has to try to calm and nurture the chimp to make the chimp feel better. So that's Steve Peters' metaphor. And as you were
Yeah.
talking, that came to mind as the people, or even for yourself, it sounds like it sounds like, I don't know, did you give your eating disorder a name?
No, actually,
Oh.
I don't think I did. Yeah, yeah.
But it
Maybe I
sounds,
wasn't
yeah.
that creative. I don't know.
It sounds like, for yourself and for what you're describing, that there's a chimp that's gets obsessed with food and is really powerful and overpowers the person, and stops them from feeling and thinking and positively about themselves.
Yeah, so it's tough because that part or the chimp as you describe it,
Yeah.
that is going to be quite distressed at the idea of letting go. So you're dealing with so many emotions. Then grief is a big one. You know, people letting
Mm.
that go because some people have had this for 20 years. It's they've really invested so much time into it, and you're asking
Yeah.
someone to slowly peel that away. There's probably going to be a grieving process.
Yeah.
Then they're feeling for maybe the first time when they start actually challenging this a little bit and talking back and saying, "Look, I see you're trying to protect me, but I'm actually okay to go out for lunch." Then they go out for lunch and then they feel feelings that they haven't felt for a long time. So that's really tough for them as well. So look,
Yeah.
it's a challenging journey. You
Yeah.
know, it's not, and particularly for somebody who's been in it for a huge amount of time. It's tough.
Okay. Okay. So take me on through your journey. What did the recovery process look like for you?
Learning to feel, I think,
Okay.
is what comes to,
Yeah.
because like all I ever remember, particularly back in my 20s, was thinking.
Okay.
That's all I can remember, like deep, deep, deep. Not being able to sleep. I was thinking so much. Thinking about every single cracker that I ate, every single bit of butter, like thinking about what I was going to eat next. What time is it? How long has it been since I've eaten? How many calories was in that? It
Mm.
was just all thinking. I can't tell you the level. I became a mathematician.
Okay.
I knew the calories in everything, and I probably could have got a degree in nutrition. I knew how
Yeah.
things were digested, and it was trying to trick my body all the time. So really, like for everybody, it is about learning to get out of your head and get into your body. And most of our issues in life, not just with eating disorders, are about
Mm.
people being in their head.
Okay.
We live way too much in our head, and we no longer do the things that we're meant to be doing, like being out in the sun,
Mm.
playing, having
Mm.
fun,
Yeah.
doing hobbies outside. We're kind of we're in offices and all that sort of stuff, and we're not designed for that.
Sure.
But yeah, the biggest thing really is just connecting with your feelings again, and I say that like it's really easy, I just come out of your head and
Yeah.
connect it. It's really hard, but we were born able to feel and being okay with feeling. So really learning to come back to that again. So it's nearly gone back to the roots, we were born with intact self-esteem. So it's also gone back to that too, making it
Yeah.
intact again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so what helped you to make your self-esteem more intact?
Um, I suppose challenging that, whether you call it a voice or whatever, like, again, detaching from it and kind of going like, why are you telling me that I'm worthless or
Okay.
not good enough, or
Mm.
whatever it is, and challenge it again, because you'd be like, you're fat, and be like kind of looking in the mirror going, well, clearly not, like, do you know what I mean? So
Okay. Okay.
kind of really just trying to kind of come back at it and going like, why are you telling me that? What's your agenda? Really trying to use, it's quite like, but kind of coming back to it and going, why are you telling me that? What's your purpose? You're trying to keep me safe, but I'm okay. So challenging those thoughts. Not everything you think is real. I think I thought every time I thought something that it had to be true.
Yeah.
Um, but look,
Yeah.
honestly, the more you get into your body, the less time you spend in your head anyway. Like if
Yeah.
you're out in nature and you're grounding yourself and you're walking through the grass barefoot, you're in the sea and all that sort of stuff, you can't be thinking. It's nearly impossible to be thinking when so you're kind of
Yeah.
nearly taking away power then by
Yeah.
actually going out and doing the things and like dancing and all those things that we are supposed to be doing. Now, again, I make it sound simple and it's really not, but like
Mm.
it is a journey and a half. But one bit at a time, even small exercise, like feel yourself sitting in the chair, put your feet in the ground, like
Yeah. Yeah.
be present. We are
Yeah.
never present. anymore. Always in the past and always in the future. So again, you're just giving power to it. What am I going to look like if that you're in your head, you're thinking about the future. Remember when I looked like that, then I felt you're in the past. So kind of coming back into the present again, it's just another small thing. But look, it takes a lot of work. You're talking about daily affirmations even can be really helpful. At just challenging that piece. Like it's a huge amount of work. And then for some people, not for everybody, they also might need to go through might need dietary support, they might need medical support, so it can be multifaceted depending on where the person's at. Obviously not everybody is there. So it's a bit of a mountain, but one step at a time,
that sounds so really, really difficult. But back to the feelings, so just like it is for children, early on, it's about getting them to connect to the feelings, to express emotions, negative, positive. And so it's the same for adults as well.
Well, it's amazing. Like, sorry, I couldn't cross you, but it's amazing. Even sometimes when I ask an adult, I'm like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I was just thinking." And I was like, "Yeah, but how are you feeling?" And again, I was just thinking that, and it's so interesting. Even watching adults, they tell you what they're thinking as opposed to how they're actually feeling.
No, I identify strongly with that. It's almost like a default for people, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah.
How are you feeling? I think I want some chips for dinner. No, that's
exactly.
not how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Was there an aha moment for you, or was it a gradual process?
I don't know if there is. I think there's moments for people, where like, and I do remember being, I was really in the depths of it, in my 20s, and I do remember hearing a song, and it was called "I Was Here," and it was, I don't know, it was a Beyonce song, but it's a really really powerful song. Actually, I'd never heard it, and it was all kind of about like, when you leave this world, what do you want to leave behind, kind of thing. And I remember just maybe that was like an aha moment of like, what am I doing? Now I wish it was that easy to just say, what am I doing? And then, but definitely there is a lot of those moments. I think for people, I don't know if there's one, I don't know if there's, what they talk about on TV where there's like a turning point and then everything was okay. Because even if there is an epiphany, you still have to work at it. It probably drove motivation. A little bit. I think those aha moments can drive motivation, but it doesn't fix it.
It helped you continue on the path towards. Would you describe it as recovery or discovery? What would you describe the journey as?
That's an interesting one. I'm not sure about the word recovery. I'm not sure that I like it. I think we're always going deeper and we're always discovering more about ourselves and everything. So actually, I'd never thought of your word there, discovery. Recovery is almost like as if you're broken or something. I nearly think of a car broken down on the side of the road and the recovery truck coming to get it or something like that. And I suppose again, that's my personal. Somebody else might really really like that word. But I really think discovery is a lovely one because we're always going deeper, and people will get to a certain level and realize, actually, this is where I want to go. This is where I wanted to go, but now I want to actually go a little bit further. So the end, I can see recovery from obviously like a medical point of view. It's or a weight-based thing or something like that. But I actually really like that word discovery. It's lovely.
Oh, good. So you've got the kind of the medical recovery. You're no longer, say, physically ill, but actually it's the discovery, it's the feelings and the discovery that's the important aspect.
And we're always growing. Like, if you think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I remember somebody saying to me before, that the top one is like self-actualization. And when you get to self-actualization, everything will be grand. But it's like you're never going to turn around and be like, oh, now I'm self-actualized, so therefore off I go. Like, we're always going to be doing it. So there's always going to be more layers and stuff like that. But obviously, maybe we can do those layers in a place where there's no harm being done to the body.
Yes.
So that's the idea.
That sounds ideal, the word you said. So you're a coach, you mentioned
Mm.
earlier, as am I. That's why I'm doing this podcast. And so, how did you get into coaching?
Um, it was accidental. Everything is
Okay.
accidental in my life. I just realized I just accidentally wrote a book and accidentally became a coach. Um, my attention was brought to the course, and I'm going to be really honest. I don't know that I was that keen on doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Just I suppose like where I was at in life and stuff like that. I wasn't sure about it. Um, Probably on the first weekend, I was really unsure of it then. And then I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was just so powerful. I was in awe. It really opened up an awful lot for me. And I just love coaching now. Like it just really that idea. I think I felt like I'd never gotten that before where somebody was really saying, but what is that like for you? Like, you know, and those kind of questions, really like leaving it up to me, leaving me in the driver's seat, so to speak, rather than
Yes.
being
Yeah.
told what to do, you know?
Yeah.
And I just found it so powerful. And then I went on then after doing the coaching course and then did the advanced course and then did a couple of the add-ons as well. I really love it. And I just think if more people knew how to coach within companies and schools and stuff like that, we just have better conversations with people. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so
Oh,
I
yes.
just
Yeah.
I loved it. So
Yeah.
again, I have to say I was on the fence about it. And again, that was probably just my own stuff. But um, I'd love to do it again. You know, like
Yeah.
I'd love to do the
Yeah.
course again. You know,
Yeah.
but I get to work in it. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
so tell me about your work. What coaching work are you doing? I know you do a lot of work around eating and eating disorder, let's say.
Mm.
So what other work do you do in the coaching sphere?
So I would say general coaching as well.
Okay.
That does most of the people I see are around that kind of body image and eating distress kind of stuff. But general coaching as well. A lot of delivery in schools. I actually recently delivered a life coaching course as well, which was interesting to be on the other side of it. So that was good. And yeah, so just lots of different bits and pieces. Like I was in a residential eating disorder place there recently as well, given a lovely presentation on hope. So that was really lovely because they really needed that, you know. So just lots of different work, you know, those are
Yeah.
little different things, and I love that. I love the diversity of it. It's really nice going to different places, and I suppose showing people the benefits of coaching firsthand as well. You know, the style that I would deliver a course in is always that kind of coaching style. It's not me standing up there just delivering a presentation. I would always use the coaching questions and everything. So you're kind of exposing people to it as well,
Okay.
which I
Okay.
think is really lovely.
Okay. Talk to me about the coaching questions. What are the coaching questions?
Oh God, don't put me on the spot like that now, Janie. Well, look, you know yourself. I don't have a list of questions,
Okay.
right? You know, I think obviously I've read them in the book and everything as I was going through the course and everything. You're working off what the person says, you know,
Yeah.
like, and the question is there, it's there somewhere in the back of your mind, but you know yourself it's powerful questioning.
Sure.
Um, I think the biggest thing, yeah, the questions, but also hearing what the person's actually saying, you know, because they will be sometimes, I was going to say contradicting, but it's not the right word. There'll be two parts of them nearly speaking, you know, and we hear that. We hear people saying it all the time. Oh, there's one part of me really wants to, and the other part doesn't. So hearing that and asking a question based on it. So I really ask the questions based on what the person has given me. I don't go in with this list of rehearsed
Sure.
questions because
Yeah.
I just don't know that that would work.
Yeah.
Um, so base the question off what they're saying. But again, it's just to kind of open up a conversation and go down a little bit deeper again. I thought you were going to ask me there for a list of questions or something. I
No,
starting to sweat.
no, no. The questions are in the book, but yeah, I think the advice is you can ignore the book for now, and the question will come.
The
No,
questions they come from your body. You see,
yeah,
that's the thing again. Like they don't come from your head. If you're in your head and you're thinking of all the questions that I learned, and here's a good question to ask here, you're not being present to the person in front of you. That you know. So like, and I actually remember the first time it happened that a question, I can only describe it as it came out of here.
Okay.
And I asked this question, and the minute I asked it, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," because it was quite blunt, like. And
Yeah.
then I was actually with a load of people, and but it was in a coaching context, and I remember being like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry," and everybody kind of looked at me, and they were like, "No, that was a really good question," and I was like, "God,"
Yeah.
and I started to trust that a little bit more. Then that once they're in there, but they really need to be coming from here,
So the questions come from the person you're with, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering with people with, I keep saying eating disorder. I don't, is that the right term even after the
Like,
conversation we've had?
yeah, technically speaking, yes, right.
Okay.
But again, it's something I use because I have to tell people how to get to me. So therefore, that's how I have to, I have to put that on the website, and I
Yes.
have to. But it's, I would say using food as a way of coping, but like that's not
Yeah.
how I'm going to title myself. But
Yeah.
look,
Yeah. Yeah.
people do. I do it. I eating disorder, eating distress around food
Yeah.
anxiety, ED, just for short.
Yes.
So there's multiple different things. But again, I would always ask
Yeah.
the person, "What do you call it?" so that I can work on, because
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than if that grates on someone's nerves using that term. So I'd always ask them what they use.
Mm. And so, at what point can you help someone with eating distress or an eating disorder?
When you say what point, what exactly do you mean?
So, I suppose I'm thinking of intervention.
Mm.
So, at what point in someone's journey can a coach help them with their eating distress?
Look, if they're medically okay, I'm okay to do that. I would ask a lot of people to be under the care of a GP. I think that's really, really important just to be checking in. Again, that's not, um, I would be kind of putting it on the table about a dietitian. I think that's important as well because they do need to be looking after themselves while they do it. But I
Yeah.
suppose, look, a big misconception that people have is that everybody with issues around food is really unwell. That's not necessarily true. Um, they're doing self-destructive behaviors, but it doesn't mean that they're not maybe nourishing enough. We
Okay.
get this picture from media that, somebody with an eating disorder is like looks a particular way, and it's usually underweight, and it's usually it's usually a teenage girl, and that's what's, on kind of magazine covers or, coming up on social media. That's not necessarily true. Actually, most of the people that I work with are in their 30s, I would say. Actually, I think actually down at the moment a little bit older. Um, and are, we're talking about overeating, we're talking about undereating, we're talking about like periods of restriction and periods of binging and stuff like that. So it's not always that um really, really underweight person that you think, and like they probably wouldn't be coming to me. That
Okay.
the reality is if somebody is maybe that like physically unwell, they're going to be going in. And now I have had people obviously approach me, and I know straight away by talking to them that I'm not the right person for them, and I would be kind of pointing them in the right direction because you're if you're really restricting and you're really not looking after the body, you can't take in your brain is not working properly, unfortunately, and you can't take in what's happening in the room. You're not present. You're very spaced out and stuff like that. So they do need to be able to be present. I suppose that would be the and if I feel that that's not what's happening, I would be kind of making suggestions about something else. You know.
Brilliant. I have one last question, Andrea, and I always finish with a more general question that's more broad than the conversation that we've had. And it's if you could change one thing about the world tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Oh my God. um
So the first thing that comes to mind is what I
The
ask
first
people.
thing that comes to mind is, do you know what? I would take technology away from kids, and
Okay.
that's literally
Yeah. Yeah.
because I see kids now with adult issues, and I find that heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's probably the first thing.
I actually totally agree with you. That's the first thing I'd change as well. Believe it or not,
Yeah.
the number of young people I see with what I describe as smartphone addiction is unbelievable,
Yeah.
and they're tools made for adults. They're not a lifestyle. That's my perception.
That's yeah.
It it probably feels a little bit controversial because all these smart devices are becoming ubiquitous. They're just everywhere, but so harmful to young minds at the same time.
Yeah, you see, we're becoming morphed with it, like
Yeah,
we're human beings, we're supposed to be, but we're essentially nearly becoming like AI. We're just getting morphed into it. Like, so I that would be, yeah, I would take
yeah,
I yeah.
yeah. No, I love that answer. So, Andrea, we can find your book More Than the Mirror on Amazon and on your website. That's
Yeah.
andreaweldon.ie. Thanks so much for being a guest.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.